That's the Texans at the Ravens. BetMGM dealing Baltimore -9. They've been off for 3 weeks now after not playing anyone against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You go back to that first matchup, 25-9. CJ Stroud did not get intercepted, but he did take 5 sacks, including one on 4th and 1. He did lose a fumble. For me, I'm leaning Ravens here because Kyle Hamilton will be back. He started to practice towards the end of last week. That rest is critical. And I just think, you go from the controlled conditions that he had against the Browns defense that I was wrong about. I thought they would show up on the road. RJ, you were 100% right on that one, that their road splits. And Mike, you also said it. The road splits were meaningful with that Browns defense, but the Texans took advantage of that. I don't think they can take advantage of a Ravens defense giving up 5.1 yards per attempt, by far the lowest in the NFL. I am leaning Ravens. RJ, what are you doing on this game?
Yeah, you mentioned the 25-9. This was a similar line. It was around 9.5 for that game as well. And it turns out the market was underrating both teams. We didn't know what the Texans were in week 1. They came into the season as I think the co-lowest Super Bowl odds of anyone, the co-biggest long shot. And here they are, one of the final 8 teams. And even with that, going from that Super Bowl long shot to the divisional round, I could argue the market underrated Baltimore more because it turns out they're historically good. You look at stats like DVOA, they are just dominating and really comparing to some of the best teams we've seen in the last 20 years. Houston's offense, like you said, the success comes through the passing game. Baltimore is first in yards per pass, and they've had some big wins against some elite pass offenses like San Francisco, like Miami. And their defense also top 10 in sack rate and interception rate. So they are capable of making big plays, but also great situationally, including second in the red zone. Houston's defense has not faced an offense that finished higher than 14th in yards per play since that game against Baltimore in week 1. This is a massive step up for that unit that has not really been tested since week 1. And that Baltimore offense is top 5 in yards per play. So Houston's defense typically great versus the run, struggles versus the pass. Baltimore's offense has shown it could do either of those things. I think Baltimore's offense has success in this game. I'm not sure that Houston can keep up against a very good defense, so I am also leaning to Baltimore covering the number. If you can get it in single digits, I think it's still worth laying for Baltimore.
Yeah, I agree. I think one thing that affects perception is how the Ravens came out when they were the 1 seed that year, when Derrick Henry kind of punched them in the mouth and they got the lead and they jumped on them. I don't think the Texans have that kind of offense to do that to Baltimore. Mike, where are you going on this game?
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. I think I posed this question on HQ last night, and I want to ask you guys as well, because I firmly believe that if the Texans had just beaten the Browns by a normal outcome, and what I mean by that, say they win the game by 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 7 points. If that were the outcome and it was a final drive or they made a stand to win the game like that, I think the number that we would see here would be 10.5. And that may be where it closes, frankly. But that's where I make the number. I made it all the way up to 10.5 for the Ravens. It's always the rust versus rest question when you get to this point. But I think giving that Ravens defense a home game is significant. And then the other thing I want to talk about with CJ Stroud, we talk about home road splits. He hasn't really played a ton recently outdoors in a road environment. You look at their last 1, 2, 3, 4 games they played at home, or one on the road against the Colts in another dome in a controlled environment. Didn't play the Titans game where Case Keenum led them to a 3-point overtime win. He played against the Jets outside. They scored just 6 points. Since November 1st, he's played just 2 games outdoors. I think it's somewhat concerning when you're talking about a rookie quarterback against an elite defense here. So if there was a time for him to not be able to take care of the football, for this offense to struggle, which I think they're going to have no chance running the football here, I think this is all Ravens all the way. And again, I think a normal win over Cleveland, this thing's 10.5.
Cleve TA, one of the many guys I follow on Twitter, pointed out that teams coming off the big upset win, like the Texans, like the Bucs, like the Packers, 15-22 against the number in the next round, and 3-6 against the number when they won those games by 14 plus, which all of them did. What about the total here? 44, RJ.
Yeah, total's interesting. We're going to have to track how this weather's going to look in Baltimore. I kind of think that it could come under the 44. I think it has come down a few points since it opened. Just under the premise that the Texans are probably going to struggle in this environment outdoors, like Mikey was talking about, and the Ravens with their very strong running game will be able to ice down the clock in the second half. Probably not going to look to put up 40 points in this game by any means. Just get out the door with a win and keep everybody healthy moving on to the AFC Championship game. So I can understand why this is trending down. I'm interested to hear where Mikey thinks it should settle. I'm probably still leaning under at this number. If it gets any lower than that, though, it's probably just a stay away.
Mike, what's your view on the total?
Yeah, so I've got it at 44.4. So basically 44.5 is where I think it should be. And the reason for that, I'm heavy on the Ravens side as well. Again, make the number up over 10 for the Ravens. So what I worry about, if you're looking at the total here and you want to go under, grab it now. Do not let it get to 43. There are a number of scenarios. One that I think we could see is a 30-13 victory from the Ravens that would, you're sitting in a push condition at that point. But my worry is here, kind of like Buffalo. They're basically, you're talking Ravens performance where they end up with 4 touchdowns. And if they do score the 4 touchdowns here, it's likely a scenario that you're going over this total that's been bet down. So I agreed with the market move out from 46 down 44. Again, 41 and 44 being pretty key numbers here in the league. If you want to play under, I would say this is your last chance. I would not go under 43, which I think this game ultimately closes at 10 and 43.
Looking like rain in the forecast. The wind not looking too bad right now, 8 to 10 miles per hour. RJ, is this a game you would be looking to tease, especially if you can find an 8.5?
Yeah, at 8.5, it's a great teaser number. I just don't know what else exists that I'd be willing to tease it with. I know there's a big, blinking sign on -2.5, and Mikey would love teasing the Chiefs up at that number. But the way the Chiefs have played, we'll get into that game. That game could go either way for me. Chiefs could win by 20, lose by 20. Nothing would really surprise me in that game.
Mm-hmm.
Mikey?
Yeah, I mean, I would consider teasing it at 8.5. I think that's a big reason why you're not going to find a ton of 8.5s left floating out there. I'm going to quickly check. Yeah, it's mostly been dried up. I think, like I said, I think if anything, this thing's headed to 10 at this point. So you're probably not going to get the opportunity to. But if you do find 8.5s, if we do get some buying back on the Texans side, I personally would pair it with Kansas City plus 8.5. If you want to play Lions money line as well, I think that's okay. I think the 8.5 on the Kansas City side is a little stronger than what would ultimately be Lions minus a half a point.
Yeah, that's one of my wishful thinking lines because we are seeing 9.5s. It's trending up, not down.